it's Ed, and welcome to episode 6 of Cracking the Codex. We're reaching towards the end of the Space Marine Codex, and we have got the first company task force for you today. As always, I'm joined by John. How are you feeling about this one, John?
I have a bias that I really like Terminators, so I feel this could be the detachment for me. If not, oh well.
Yeah, but do you like winning?
Liking and being able to win are two distinctly separate things that don't always kind of align for me. But yeah, I prefer to win. Not gonna lie.
That's true, yeah. It's definitely
maybe
not one
not.
of the stronger ones. The more I look at it, though, the more I like the rules. I think there's a lot of fun sort of levers in there. The strats are good. I quite like the flavor of the once per game. Your enhancement buffs your squad as well. I think it just doesn't have the power level of the other detachments that we talked about towards the
Yeah.
start. I do like it though, and I think we've written quite a fun list. And for those of you keeping track at home, leaving shirty comments, you'll be pleased to see that we haven't gone with Dark Angels.
I tried. I really did try.
Yeah, the last page did say Dark Angels on it for quite a while before we tweaked.
Oopsie.
So, what do you get? If you are a first company detachment, you are an extremis level threat. So you don't get a detachment rule all battle. You get a once per battle rule, which is one of the reasons this is slightly underwhelming in comparison to some of the others. Yeah. Once per battle in your command phase, you can use this ability until the end of the start of your next command phase. Each time a model with your army with the Oath of Moment ability makes an attack that targets your Oath of Moment target, you can re-roll the wound roll as well. That is a lot of words to say you have index Oath of Moment. You re-roll your hits and you re-roll your wounds once per game. It was a great ability, and I think people didn't really value it as much as they might have done until it went away.
I miss it already.
Yeah, no, it is solid, but I would like to have just a detachment rule and this. Stratagem wise, as always, we're tracking how many are battle tactics. This is one of the weaker detachments in terms of ability to use free stratagems. You've got Armor of Contempt, same as it always was. Heroes of the Chapter, for 1 CP, you can pick in your shooting or fight phase 1 Terminator, Blade Guard, Stern Guard, or Vanguard Vet Squad. So your typical first company units. You can pick one of those squads that has not been selected to shoot or fight. You get +1 to hit, and if they are below half strength, +1 to wound. I am not jazzed about this, to be honest. It's anytime you've got an ability that you don't get full benefit up from until you're below half strength, it smooths out your unit's ability to perform, but I would just rather use my unit, try and get the most out of them at their peak. So for an offensive strat, I'd much rather, get +1 to wound all of the time. It's not something I'm necessarily excited to spend CP on otherwise.
Yeah, and a lot of the Terminator units, unless they're using something like a Thunder Hammer or a Power Fist, they're already going to be hitting on 2 potentially in combat. So it's kind of like your Deathwing Knights don't benefit from this, but then your normal Terminators, it brings them up to the speed for them. So maybe it means that people not playing Dark Angels then get that benefit perhaps, but at the cost of CP.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't paired with your army rule of Oath of Moment giving you rerolls to hit against 1 unit, which you're probably going to be putting whatever your big unit into. Yeah, there's definitely use cases for it, but I'm not excited to use this twice in a turn, that's for sure. However, there is a stratagem that I am excited to use potentially twice, maybe free, with a captain's ability to use those battle tactics for free, and that is Legendary Fortitude. So that is use it in your opponent's charge phase after an enemy unit ends a charge move, and you pick one of the aforementioned units, Terminators, Blade Guard, Stern Guard, or Vanguard Vets, that is in engagement range of that enemy unit, and until the end of the turn, whenever an attack is made against that unit, you are -1 damage. Obviously, that's quite a strong ability. The Deathwing Knights that Dark Angels have, one of their main strengths is being able to be -1 damage. It's not as good as that inherently. You're not -1 damage against shooting, which is where it's quite powerful. However, it is nice to be able to just turn off some really nasty melee, make it go from damage 2 to damage 1, make your 4 wound Terminators with Storm Shields twice as hard to kill, for example. Really valuable stratagem to have, and it's definitely a good reason to bring her. The other 3 stratagems are fairly solid as well. Starting off with the worst of the lot, I would say. Terrifying Proficiency, that is, I'm not going to keep repeating it, the same units, your Terminators, yada yada. In your fight phase, you target one of your squads, and in your opponent's next command phase, each enemy unit within 6 inches must take a battle shock test. If they're below half strength, subtract 1 from that test, and they don't need to take multiple battle shocks, so you can't force a half strength unit to take 2 battle shock tests. Initially, when I looked at this, I thought, that's not too shabby. You can force them to take a battle shock test, and then they won't be able to use their defensive strats. Turns out that's not it at all. It's just make them take a battle shock test in their next turn if they survive. Thoughts on this one?
It's if things go well, great.
Yeah.
But
it's like, but you don't
seldom does it go that way.
you want it to be, you want to use it if things have gone wrong as like to bail you out. I guess in that case, there is some niche use. So it's like, oh, I need to kill 6 models here to take you off the objective. Cool, I didn't kill 6. Now I'm going to make you take a battle shock test at -1, or just make you take a battle shock test. Try and deny you primary. I'm not jazzed by it. Then we've got Duty and Honor. In your movement phase, pick a unit within a range of an objective marker. It makes the objective stay yours until your opponent controls it at the start or end of any turn. Solid to have. Some, especially if you're running big bricks of Terminators, especially combined with the next stratagem, you might find yourself struggling to spread out and get as much of the objective play as you'd like. And finally, you've got Orbital Teleportarium. End of your opponent's fight phase, you pick one of your Terminator units and you remove it from the battlefield, place it back into strategic reserves, and you bring it back on in your next reinforcement step. Using the Deep Strike special rule. You can't pick something up that was in engagement range of an enemy unit, however. This is nice. Being able to... One of the best ways to beat a slow-moving army, like anything that's running multiple bricks of Terminators, is just to outplay them in the movement phase. If you can pick your unit up and put it back down pretty much instantly, yes, you've got to get around the 9-inch charge if you're going for Deep Strike charges. But if you just want to pick them up and put them back on an objective, more relative to the fight, seems like a good ability to me.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff. All right, enhancements. We have got 4, and this is some of the more interesting parts of the detachment to me. They all have a single buff, which is always on, and then a once per game, you can turbocharge it and you buff the unit that they're within. How are you feeling about these enhancements?
See, I like the concept of it. It feels almost like a design that they kind of produced before deciding that the detachments were going to be a thing, even. Like, this feels like something that they were like, here's how we're going to make enhancements work. Yeah. And then they've kind of deviated, because the fact that they all have that same kind of theme to them feels kind of, it's useful. And I like the fact that it's kind of like, it's got a baseline, and then it's not a conditional of if someone's battle shocked, it's something different. There's a condition that is within your control, which I like.
Yeah, and I think 3 of them really hit the mark, and then one of them's terrible. But you know what? You probably didn't want to pay for 4 enhancements anyway, so that's fine. Let's just get
can you? You can only have 3.
That's true. Good point. Yeah, so they had to make one bad, so you don't feel bad about it. Let's get the bad one out of the way. Fear Made Manifest, the most expensive. It's 30 points, and when enemy unit is within 6 inches of the bearer, each time it fails a battle shock test, 1 model in that unit is destroyed. That's not particularly exciting. Remember when that was a rule in 9th edition, and battle shock still wasn't particularly, super relevant? Yeah, it's fine. Once per battle, you can choose D3 models in that unit instead. Ooh, you know what? That's going to happen if they even fail a battle shock test in range of you. You're going to pop it, and then you're going to roll a 1 on the D3, and then your ability is exactly the same. Terrible. I'm not even going to ask your opinion. It's awful. We can move on. We have got some fun ones though. Imperium Sword, 25 points, a little bit pricey. You add one attack to the bearer's melee weapons. Once per battle, you can pop the enhancement at the start of any phase, add +1 to the attacks of all melee weapons equipped by other models in the bearer's unit as well until the end of that phase. So don't pop this in your shooting phase. Do use it in either your or your opponent's fight phase. You're giving your entire squad +1 attack. Solid.
Yeah. It says to me that you do that on your go turn. So the turn where you've gone your once per game reroll wounds against choice target, you go, I'm going to just pile in.
Potentially. Or you
might be overkill.
Like I'd like it as a backup. So you've got 2 go buttons. You can potentially slam 2 things even on the same turn. If you had one unit going in and hitting something and another unit, you can have one of them reroll hits and wounds and the other one get the +1 attack. And that might be enough to carry you through. But, you know, having that
Solid.
redundancy to just say, oh, you have a large Death Star unit that I need to deal with. Now you don't.
Yeah.
Always nice. Rights of War, 10 points. These last two are Terminator models only. So you improve the objective control of the character by 1. Once per battle at the start of any phase, you can use the enhancement. Until the end of the phase, add +1 to the objective control of all other models in the bearer's unit as well. So Terminators go from OC1 to OC2. Terminators that have a command squad in, such as Deathwing Terminators, go from OC2 to OC3. Solid. You know, it's just more objective control. 10 points. I think if you're running Terminators and you're running Terminator characters, it's hard not to put this in your list.
Yeah.
Iron Resolve, 15 points. This gives you a Feel No Pain of 5+, which is not particularly relevant. However, the once per game ability is until the end of the phase, the unit gets a 5+ Feel No Pain. That's really nice. I am super happy to put that in my list and get some durability. You can either stack that with the Legendary Fortitude stratagem, where you get the -1 damage in combat, or you can just use it on a different unit or use it separately. You can lay your defenses across your army or on one unit. It gives you a lot of flexibility between those two to just make it quite hard to crack those key units on your opponent's go turns.
It also really helps with the situation that's arisen where dev wounds can just plink away Terminators, even if they've got a feel no pain against mortals.
Yeah.
So it suddenly gives you a defense against that, where someone could be planning that that's their one route to get rid of a big brick.
Sure. You can see that John's a Dark Angel player, talking about those Watchers in the Dark, giving you feel no pain against mortal wounds.
They do nothing.
Doesn't do anything anymore. That's fine. They're still good. So the list we've gone with, we had a couple of different ideas that we played around with, and we ended up settling with Blood Angels. And I think Blood Angels have quite an interesting amount of play with this list.
Yeah.
So we've gone for 3 of the enhancements because it feels like they're quite a key part of the list. And if you want to get the most out of it, I think the enhancements are a good way to do so. Top to bottom, we've gone for an Ancient in Terminator armor. If you haven't seen the Ancient is the model that gives +1 OC to the unit he's attached to. He's going to go in with one of the 10-man squads of the Terminator Assaults with Thunderhammer Storm Shields. So they are baseline OC2. He's got Iron Resolve, so he can give them a 5+ Feel No Pain once per battle. Tanky, pretty good at holding objectives. They've got the -1 damage strat available to them in combat, and they've got the pick them up, put them back down stratagem available, the Orbital Teleportarium. They've got the what's the rule that lets them rapid ingress for free? The Teleport Homer that they come with just on their data sheet. So there's quite a lot of flexibility with these stock Terminators, which you don't get with the Deathwing Knights. Deathwing Knights are objectively a better data sheet, but these are a little bit cheaper and they've got a bit more flexibility. So I think there's quite a lot of play in there. Backing that up is the Chaplain in Terminator armor. So he gives +1 to wound, making the second Terminator squad a little more killy. And he's got Rights of War, which is the once per game, pop it, give the unit +1 OC. So he can make the second unit of Terminators also OC 20 or 22 with the character in there. We also have a Chaplain with Jump Pack with Imperium Sword for +1 attack. He's going to go with the Death Company with Jump Packs. And this is kind of your big hitter. You're really wanting to crack whatever big nut your opponent has brought. If they've got, you know, some sort of Death Star, you probably want to deal with this. It is a big points investment, 360 points, and it will die to the crackback realistically unless you're playing it with it on the fringes. But it is going to hit incredibly hard. It should deal with most problems, especially with the ability to reroll wounds, fish for those dev wounds with the Thunderhammers.
Yeah.
We've also got 2 lone operatives in this list. We haven't run the lieutenant with combi weapon in many of our example lists, just because we've tried to pack too many things in, but it's a great value. It's a lone operative. It gives reroll to wound for your army against any enemy models on a certain detachment that you pick pre-game, which is just nice to have. But even just having a 70-point lone operative is very valuable. And then we've got the Sanguinor, who is also a lone opera character. Starts off in reserve. If your opponent charges you, you can rapid ingress them effectively in their charge phase, and you get to almost heroic intervention into combat, the same as you could in previous editions. Great little trick against armies that want to get into combat with you, especially your small chaff units. You can protect those scouts. from World Eaters quite nicely. Or you can, bring him down, use him as a lone-up character to score objectives, fly around. Got 8 attacks with dev wounds. Just choose through units like nobody's business. Really solid unit. A little bit expensive, but I think quite a lot of value there. Then we've got the usual bits and pieces that you might expect to see in a Space Marines list. 2 squads of scouts, didn't have points for a third. 2 squads of inceptors. I think the assault bolters are really good here. Being able to get the volume of firepower out is really missing in this list. There is a lot of melee and not very much shooting at all. And then finally, there is a whirlwind just to try and deal with cheeky units that are difficult for you to interact with. We did look at running 3, but there's no real way to buff them up. So I think a single one just to try and pick away at units behind walls, make it so your opponent can't sit in objectives for free in case you spike high on your rolls and you kill the entire squad that's holding their objective. What are your thoughts on this list?
So I can remember when we were trying to, initially we were looking at all the different veteran units. So we did try to put Vanguard vets in, but unfortunately they can't have the combat. So they couldn't have Thunder Hammers.
They can't have the combat. Yes,
they can't have the combat. They don't do the combat no more.
Their data sheet is pretty bad.
So it's frustrating. So it meant that the Death Company kind of, if we wanted a fast moving unit that wasn't Terminator's deep striking in, it had to be the jump pack Death Company guys, and that combined with a chaplain kind of from the Blood Angel. It was like, and that opened up the fact that we could have the Sanguinor as well, which felt like was a nice theme as much as anything. And this does feel like it's all going to just drop down, pressure you, and you just got to deal with it quick enough. Otherwise, it's going to hurt. It feels like we're trying to do loyalist World Eaters, which excites me.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Because it just comes and it's very honest. It's just going to go bleh and until it starts going back up into the sky.
Yes. Being able to pick up the big units and go back into the sky and flit around with your lone-up characters does mean that even though this is quite a melee focus list, it should still score secondaries quite strongly. Lovely stuff. Well, thank you for joining us. This has been episode 6. Next week we will be talking about the final detachment. What's the final detachment, Scrivo?
It is the Gladius Task Force.
Isn't that the one that we've had forever?
Yes, but it has slightly tweaked.
Now you no longer reroll your wounds, so it's worse.
And you don't have bolt discipline anymore.
No, that's true. So we will be talking about the final detachment, and I'm sure there is something fun we can cook up for that one. Until next week, we will see you next time.